Welcome to day 3 of our daily fraction. Remember to slide it out to highlight that day 3, or you can use a pencil. Just don't use anything dark because we need to be able to see through on the other side. Okay, put that back in so you can use our dry erase marker. So today's fraction we're starting with is, well, our denominator is our total amount of school days in a year, which is 180. And we are currently on day 3. Okay, now we're going to look for our factors, so the numbers that multiply together to make our numerator. 2 factors we always know are 1 and the number itself. Using the commutative property of multiplication, I can also write it as 3 times 1. Now, the only whole number between 1 and 3 is 2. So we just have to think, is 2 a factor? 2 times anything equal 3? Another whole number? No. So that means we're done. Let's write it from least to greatest. 1, 3. Well, we have 2 factors. We have exactly 2 factors. And that is the definition for prime. Prime numbers have exactly 2 factors. Now, we're going to look for our greatest common factor. We always start with our largest factor because it makes it easier. If that doesn't work, then we keep going down till we find a common factor. So let's go ahead and make groups of 3. Remember that your shaded should all be in one group of 3. Do not have part shaded and part unshaded. This won't work because now you have fractions and fractions and you just made it much more difficult than it should be. Make sure you have all shaded together in your groups of 3 and the rest are all unshaded. Now you can make your groups of 3 like this. You can make your groups of 3 like this. You can make your groups of 3 like this. Any way you choose, as long as you have 1, 2, 3 squares in each group. That's what we must have. We can have them going horizontally. We can have them going vertically. Any way we need to make sure that we have groups of 3. If you have a different way than I'm doing it, that's perfectly fine. All we need to do is make sure we have groups of 3. So go through and put everything into groups of 3. You do not have to do your groups the way I do mine. Just make sure there are 3 squares in each group. Once you've finished making your groups of 3, you want to look and see, is there any square not in a group? Nope, every square is in at least one group of 3. So that means 3 is our greatest common factor. Okay, so now that we've used our model to divide and make our groups of 3, let's count up how many total groups of 3. That is now our new denominator. So I have 1, 2, 3 in each of these rows. So I'm going to count by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36, 39, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. So you should have gotten a total of 60 groups of 3. Now, how many groups of 3 are shaded in? Well, we only have one group of 3 shaded in. So we've just used our model to find an equivalent fraction in lowest terms. Now we're going to use our algorithm, our step-by-step process with long division. And we always divide by the same number because we divided everything into the same amount of groups. We divided everything into groups of 3. So now we're going to do the same thing just with numbers instead of with our model. So I have 180. I'm dividing into groups of 3. So I want a larger number that I know I can easily multiply by. I'm pretty good at multiplying by 5s, and I'm pretty good at multiplying by 10s. So I'm going to multiply by 50 because that takes my 5s and my 10s. My 10 here, my multiple of 10, actually just moves everything over a place. So I put my placeholder, and then it's just 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, numbers the same, zeros a game, more on top, no need to stop. All right, now 30. I'm going to do 10 times 3. So whatever I have out here, I'm multiplying to this divisor to figure out how many groups of that. So 10 groups of 3 is 30. 50 groups of 3 was 150. I'm making these big groups, taking out large chunks to make it easier. Numbers the same, zeros a game. So my remainder, what I have left over is 0. I have a remainder of 0. When we get into long division later this year, it will not always be remainder 0, but on our daily fraction it should be. Okay, we're going to add up our partial quotients. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 1 is 6. Okay. We do need to check this. So to check, I take my divisor, which is 3, times my quotient, which is 60, plus my remainder, which is 0. Now, since it's 0, and the identity property of addition says when you add 0, it stays the same, I don't need to go through adding 0 if it's just going to stay exactly the same. So I'm just going to do my divisor times my quotient. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 6 is 18. Now I see that that matches my dividend inside here, and that means check. I did get it correct, and my denominator is definitely 60. Okay, so 3. Now I'm going to do my numerator divided by 3. Well, that would be 1 times 3 gives me 3. Number is the same, 0 is the game, and that means I have a remainder of 0, and my quotient is 1. I'm still going to check it. Divisor times quotient plus remainder, but again, because my remainder is 0, I don't need to add it because of that identity property of addition. So 1 times 3 is 3. This is actually the identity property of multiplication. When you multiply by 1, it stays the same. So really, we didn't have to do that, but it's always good to check. Here, it matches our dividend of 3, so that checks. And that means that my numerator is definitely 1. Okay. So now let's go ahead and turn over to enter our data collection page. Okay, so now we need to fill this in. We are in trimester 1, week 2. Our date for today is 8/12/19, and our fraction for today is 1/60. Okay, let's go ahead and get out our number line. We did groups of 3. So in that groups of 3, let's go to the first line, because this is our first group out of 60 total groups. Because if you count up the sections, you will find that there are 60 sections. And this lines up perfectly with 3 out of 180, because those are our equivalent fractions. Okay, let's go ahead and put the number lines away, erase your worksheet, and thank you for joining me.